Hey kids! Oh, it's me, Mr. Todd, and boy am I excited to give you this week's lesson. So, let's get started. Now, you might remember that we've been tracking the journeys and life of Paul. Now, in our story this week, we're going to pick up from where we left off with Paul and Silas being in prison, telling all the guards and people in prison about the good news of Jesus. Now, Paul, he gets out of prison and he starts traveling around again, spreading all that news to different cities. And he eventually finds his way to Jerusalem. Now, when he gets to Jerusalem, though, there are some people there that do not believe in Jesus. And they're really upset by Paul. In fact, they're so upset, they want to get him in big trouble. And do you know what they do? They get Paul arrested. And Paul, he just wants a fair trial because these charges, bogus. So he's waiting in prison for 2 years so that he can go and meet Caesar, the emperor in Rome, who's like the head guy who can decide this case. And so they send Paul on a ship from Jerusalem to Rome. And this is where our story is going to take place, on that ship to Rome. You can find this in the book of Acts, chapter 27, and verses 9 through 44. And I hope you all remember how to find that in the Bible. So maybe after you see this story, you can go find it and read it yourself. Well, I'm so excited for today's story. And then I've got a little special surprise at the end of the lesson because someone has a special week coming up. Let's get started. Okay, well, here's our story. And the theme of today's story is that God takes care of those who follow him. God takes care of those who follow him. So let's find out how this plays out in Paul's journey on a ship to Rome. So, this ship, it sailed slowly. It set off and it sailed slowly for many days towards the city of Cnidus. Now, this is an interesting one because it starts with a C, but that C is silent. It's more like in the brackets on the bottom, Cnidus. All right, so they started heading in that direction. But do you know what happened? They had a really hard time. Why? Why do you ask? Well, because there was really bad wind. Really bad wind. Really bad wind. Whoa, there was a balloon behind there blowing in my face. There was really bad wind, and it caused the boat to just like go in the wrong direction, and they lost lots of time. Yeah, lots of monkey time. No, lots of time. It took a long time. So, shipping, going on a boat could be very unpredictable in the time that Paul and Jesus lived. The wind picks up, they get set off course, and that's what happened here. But Paul, he stood up and he warned everyone, and he said to the crew, I believe there's great trouble, with my big finger pointing. I believe there's big trouble if we continue, and we're going to have a shipwreck and loss of cargo and danger to everyone in the crew that could lose their lives. But the captain, he's like, whatever. And he just sailed on and didn't listen to a word that Paul had said. Well, shortly after the captain disagreed with Paul, the bad wind that they were experiencing actually turned to a good wind and helped them go in the direction that they wanted to. And all the crew members were like, hey, you know what? This trip might not be so bad after all. Things are going our way. But then it took another turn, and a nor'easter wind came. That's a powerful wind. And it blew the ship around. Everyone in the ship's getting tossed and turned. Wait. Whoa! Hey, ship. Everyone. What's going on here? Ah. Well, everyone was pretty scared. The sailors, they even had to tie up the lifeboats so that they didn't fall off the ship, and that they would have them in case they needed to use them to escape. What's gonna happen next? Will the storm get better? It didn't get better. It got worse. The next day, the storm was getting so bad that they had to lighten the ship by throwing out all of their cargo. They threw out all the cargo so that the ship would be lighter, and the storm just got so bad, the sky was so dark, they didn't even know if it was daytime or nighttime. They couldn't see any of the stars to know where to point the ship. This was a bad storm, and all hope was getting lost. They were in total despair, full of fear, and not knowing what to do. After they had been lost at sea for several days, Paul stood up and said, You should have listened to me in the first place and not left the island of Crete. You would have avoided all this damage and loss. But take courage. None of you, none of you, none of you, none of you will lose your life. Because I know this. Because last night, an angel of God stood beside me and said, Don't be afraid, Paul, for you will surely stand trial before Caesar. What's more, God, in his goodness, has granted safety to everyone sailing with you. You're all gonna be safe, okay? Yeah, you too. Everyone. So take courage, for I believe in God. It will be just as he said, but we will be shipwrecked on an island. Huh? Then, on the 14th night, they thought they were approaching land, so they tested the water to see how deep it was. Oh yes, it's getting lower. This is good. So they were worried that the ship might hit a sandbar, so they threw an anchor overboard to make sure that the ship stopped. Oops. There was only one thing left to do, and that was to pray that daylight would come. And so they prayed for daylight. But some of the soldiers and the people on the ship, they were still really terrified. So they actually tried to escape. But Paul saw them and said, no one can escape or else you'll all die. This is not what God said. And so the captain persuaded them, no, you have to stay on the ship. And they cut the rope so that the lifeboat that they were trying to escape away with fell into the water. So now they had no lifeboat. Now at this point, they had been watching and were so worried about this storm and fighting with the storm and all throwing the cargo over and being lost at sea. None of them had even eaten. So Paul, he persuaded everyone to finally just have something to eat. So they ate. Yum. Yum, 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 yum. Eat. Yum. After they ate, they actually took all the food that was left on the boat and threw it overboard to make the ship even lighter. Now, the morning came, and there was actually daylight. And what's more, they could see land. So you remember, they had thrown those anchors over, so the boat was kind of stuck. So all the sailors, they cut the ropes of those anchors so that they could start sailing the ship towards that land. And that's just what they did. But as they were sailing towards the land, they hit a sandbar, and the front of the boat got stuck in the sand, and then the back of the boat was getting crashed by all these hard waves, powerful waves, and the boat actually began to break and pieces of it flew off. This is terrible. They can see the land, they're stuck on a sandbar, and the boat is starting to break up. What are they gonna do? At this point, the guards, they just wanted to now kill all the prisoners just so they wouldn't swim away and escape. But the captain said, no, I want to save Paul's life. He's a prisoner, so no one can kill any prisoners. And so anyone who can swim, jump overboard if they hadn't already been knocked in the sea from the boat getting broken up, and swim to shore on the island. And then anyone else who was left hung on to little pieces of broken boat and floated their way and paddled their way to the island. And just like Paul had said, because of the angel that appeared to him with God's word, everyone their life was spared, the ship was lost, and they were safely put on that island. God takes care of those who follow him. Well, that's the story for today. Let's come back in a few minutes and we'll break it down a little bit. Well, it's that special time. Hey everybody, we've got a birthday this week. Do you know who it is? I do. It's Justice. He's got a big birthday coming up this week, so I want to say happy birthday, Justice. And this is just for you, buddy. Celebrate! Woo! There's confetti everywhere, yay! Well, listen, I hope you have a wonderful birthday. Happy birthday. God bless you. Hey kids, I hope you enjoyed the story today. It's a really great story about really how God takes care of the people that follow him. Well, I wanted to throw a couple questions at you from today's story. First one is, I wonder, how do you think the people who were on the ship felt during the storm? I mean, think about it. You had a lot of people, like the guards, they were Roman. The crew of the ship, we don't really know a lot about them, but chances are that they were not believers in Jesus, and they probably were not even Jewish, so they probably didn't know a lot about our God. So imagine being in that storm. What do you think might have been going through their minds? Well, if I had to guess, I bet they were pretty scared. They probably thought they were going to die. I mean, the boat's breaking up. The storm's going on for like 2 weeks. They can't even see the sky. So they were probably pretty scared. You know, one of the other questions that kind of jumped out to me, and I wonder if you caught it too, why would the guards want to kill the prisoners? Did you think about that? I mean, why not just let them go? Well, I did a little research. Let me share it with you. It turns out that in the Roman times, those prisoners, if you were a guard for a prisoner, it was your life. Like if that prisoner got away, you would get killed as their guard. So it was your responsibility. So a guard, a Roman guard, would rather have a prisoner, kill a prisoner, than let them escape because they would surely die themselves. So they took a big risk letting those prisoners swim to shore, trusting that they weren't gonna take off and try to escape somehow. Now, another question. What do you think the people on the ship thought when Paul told him that an angel of the Lord came to him and told them that everyone would be saved, but the ship would be wrecked and that they'd end up on some island? Like, do you think they're probably like, this guy is nuts? How am I supposed to believe this? What is he talking about? An angel came to him in a dream and now we're going to be saved? You know, one of the things I just love about Paul is his perseverance. I mean, you're talking about someone, the shipwreck, this was just like a minor thing in the life of Paul. I mean, people were trying to kill him. He was imprisoned. People tried to stone him to death. This shipwreck, this wasn't like the only time that he was shipwrecked. He went through a lot. And do you know why he did it? Because he felt it was so important to share the good news about Jesus with other people that he risked his own life, and he just went out there, and he let nothing get in his way because he knew that helping people to have a relationship with Jesus and God was more important than anything, and he was willing to go to any length and endure anything in order to do everything that he could to help other people get to know Jesus. That's one of the reasons that I just love reading about Paul. I hope you share in that joy, and I hope you remember his heart for Jesus, and that helps to inspire you in your relationship and getting to know and trusting God in everything you do. Last question. Why do you think God let that ship crash into that sandbar and get destroyed? I mean, why does God sometimes let situations like this happen in our lives where we feel like, everything is so bad and there's no solution and we lose hope? I wonder why he lets it go that far. What do you think? I think it's because God wants us to trust him. And sometimes when we're in a situation and we see that there's no hope, we're forced to really look to him. And that's when he really shines through and saves us or teaches us something or lets us just know that he's there with us in a way that we wouldn't have done if we had just relied on our own thoughts or our own strength. God is always wanting us to remember who he is and how much he loves us and how much he wants to help us. So stories like this, when Paul is and the whole crew is in the midst of despair, I mean, there seems like there's just no way out. But then God comes through with a word, with his word, which we find out is trustworthy, and he wants you to have faith in that word to get you through that situation. Remember, Paul, he was at peace while the entire ship was like going crazy and worried and full of anxiety. And that's because he was trusting in the Lord, and he knew that the Lord's promises were trustworthy, and that gave him peace. So I know we're going through some difficult times still with the pandemic, and that's something to keep in mind. Just like Paul and the crew was feeling despair, well, sometimes it's not so easy to go through the way that we're living right now. But I often think that God is trying to get our attention. And so I would just remind you guys, don't forget about where God is and that he loves you so much and that he wants to see you win through this situation that we're going through. And winning means getting to know him better and trusting him more. Well, listen, I hope you have an excellent week. I hope to see you soon. I miss you all so much, but I love the opportunity to come to you with these videos, so I really hope you enjoy it, and God bless you. I'll see you soon. Okay, go ahead. You missed.